The lies we tell ourselves are often the most dangerous. Those words echoed in my mind as I stared at the bank statement in my trembling hands. There it was, in black and white. A car loan payment for $45,000 that I'd never known about. My husband Carter had always been meticulous about our finances, or so I thought. But as I sat there in our home office, surrounded by the afternoon silence broken only by our son Tommy's gentle breathing through the baby monitor, everything I believed about our life together began to unravel. I remember the day we decided I would leave my job as a marketing executive to care for Tommy. Carter had seemed so supportive, wrapping his arms around my expanding belly and whispering, "Our family comes first." We had savings, and his income as a financial advisor was more than enough to support us. It felt like the right choice, the only choice, at the time. The first few months after Tommy's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. I threw myself into motherhood with the same dedication I'd given my career, creating schedules, reading every parenting book I could find, and treasuring every moment with our son. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with small comments from Carter. "The house could be a bit tidier," he'd say, or "maybe we should cut back on the grocery budget." I brushed them off at first, attributing his criticism to work stress. Then came the bigger jabs. "You just sit at home all day," or "I'm the one carrying all the weight here." Each word chipped away at my confidence, my sense of contribution to our family. The discovery of the car loan wasn't an accident. I'd noticed Carter becoming increasingly protective of his phone, changing passwords on our joint accounts, and making excuses to work late. That morning, after he'd rushed out without his laptop, something compelled me to log in to our online banking. The password I knew still worked, perhaps the only oversight in his carefully constructed facade. As I dug deeper into our finances, the truth emerged like a horror story written in spreadsheet cells. There were restaurant charges at places we'd never been, hotel bookings on weekends he'd claimed to be on business trips, and that car loan, a luxury vehicle that had never graced our driveway. My hands shook as I photographed every suspicious transaction, every unexplained withdrawal. Years of working in marketing had taught me the importance of documentation, though I'd never imagined using those skills to uncover my husband's betrayal. The weight of each discovery pressed against my chest, making it harder to breathe. Tommy's cry through the monitor snapped me back to reality. I quickly closed the laptop and went to his room, lifting him from his crib. As I held him close, inhaling his sweet baby scent, the magnitude of my situation crashed over me. I wasn't just a stay-at-home mom anymore. I was a woman with no income, no recent work experience, and a husband who had been systematically betraying our family. "What are we going to do, little man?" I whispered to Tommy, who responded by grabbing a fistful of my hair and giggling. His innocent joy contrasted sharply with the turmoil in my heart. I had choices to make, but first, I needed more information. I spent the next few days in a state of hypervigilance, maintaining our normal routine while secretly planning my next steps. I contacted our bank to request detailed statements going back several months. Each night, after Tommy was asleep and Carter was allegedly working late, I meticulously documented every suspicious transaction, building a timeline of deception. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. Carter arrived home later than usual, his collar slightly askew and the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his shirt. As he kissed Tommy goodnight and headed for the shower, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The message preview was brief, but devastating. "Miss you already. Can't wait to see the car you promised me." I stood there, frozen, as the pieces fell into place. The car loan, the late nights, the emotional distance, it all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. But as the shock of confirmation washed over me, something else stirred in my chest. Determination. I wasn't just going to be a victim in this story. That night, as Carter slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing with plans and possibilities. I had been more than just a marketing executive before Tommy. I had been a woman with dreams, ambitions, and most importantly, strength. Somewhere along the way, I'd let Carter's criticism and manipulation dim my light. But as I listened to the steady breathing of my son through the monitor, I made a promise to myself and to Tommy. This was not the end of our story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, I had clarity. The question wasn't if I would act, but how. As I finally drifted off to sleep, one thought remained crystal clear. The woman who discovered that bank statement would not be the same woman who emerged from this betrayal. The next morning, I woke up early and went through the motions of our daily routine. Make coffee, prepare breakfast, feed Tommy, smile at Carter as he rushed out the door. But inside, I was different. Each mundane task felt like a piece in a larger strategy, one that would lead to my independence. While Tommy napped, I created a new email account and started reaching out to my old professional contacts. Just checking in, I wrote, careful to keep my tone casual. Many responded quickly, expressing surprise and pleasure at hearing from me. Each response felt like a lifeline to my former self, the woman who had confidently navigated boardrooms and client meetings. Sarah, my former colleague who had become a successful marketing director, replied within hours. Let's grab coffee. I've been meaning to tell you about some exciting projects. My heart raced as I read her message. It was the first concrete possibility of rebuilding my professional life. But Carter's voice echoed in my head. Who would hire you now? You've been out of the game too long. I pushed the doubt aside. I had to be strategic. Any sudden moves could alert him before I was ready. I arranged to meet Sarah during one of Tommy's regular playgroup sessions, when Carter wouldn't question my whereabouts. The coffee shop was buzzing with morning energy when Sarah walked in. She looked exactly as I remembered, confident, stylish, and radiating success. We hugged, and for a moment, I fought back tears. It was the first genuine human connection I'd had in months that wasn't colored by deception. You look great, she said, but her eyes held concern. How's motherhood treating you? I had prepared for this question, crafted a response that wouldn't reveal too much, but sitting across from my old friend, the carefully constructed words crumbled. I need help, Sarah, I whispered, my voice barely steady. I need to get back to work, but it's complicated. Sarah listened without judgment as I shared a carefully edited version of my situation. I mentioned financial concerns and a desire to restart my career, but kept the details of Carter's betrayal to myself. Not yet. I couldn't risk the story getting back to him through our shared professional circles. Actually, Sarah said, leaning forward, we're launching a new digital marketing division. We need someone with your experience in relationship marketing. Would you be interested in consulting part-time? You could work mostly from home, ease back in gradually. The opportunity was perfect, almost too perfect. I could build my skills and contacts while maintaining the appearance of a stay-at-home mom. But there was one crucial detail to address. I'd need to keep this quiet for now, I said carefully. Family dynamics, you know. Sarah's expression shifted slightly, and I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. She'd been through her own divorce years ago. Of course, she said, squeezing my hand. We can start with a contract position, very low-key. No social media announcements or anything. As we worked out the details, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. But I also knew this was just the beginning. I needed to secure more than just income. I needed evidence, documentation, and a plan for Tommy's future. That evening, as I prepared dinner, I received a text from Carter. Working late again. Don't wait up. The familiar excuse now carried a different weight. Instead of feeling hurt, I felt empowered. Every hour he spent with his mistress was an hour I could use to build my escape plan. After putting Tommy to bed, I created a detailed spreadsheet of our finances, including all the hidden transactions I'd discovered. I started researching family lawyers, using incognito mode on my browser, and carefully clearing my history afterward. Each piece of information was ammunition, each document a brick in the foundation of my new life. But the real breakthrough came when I was organizing Tommy's baby photos. Behind a stack of old tax returns, I found a crumpled envelope. Inside were receipts from a jewelry store, expensive pieces I'd never seen, and a handwritten note that made my blood run cold. To my dearest Alexandra, all my love, J. Alexandra. Finally, I had a name. With shaking hands, I photographed everything and stored the images in a secure cloud account. Then I replaced the envelope exactly as I'd found it. Years of marketing experience had taught me the importance of timing in launching a campaign. This would be the most important launch of my life. As I lay in bed that night, listening to Carter's late arrival and smelling the unfamiliar perfume that clung to his clothes, I felt strangely calm. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I was thinking clearly. I had a name, evidence, and the beginnings of a plan. Most importantly, I had something Carter had inadvertently given back to me, a reason to become unstoppable. The next day would bring new challenges, but I was no longer the same woman who had discovered that bank statement. I was becoming someone stronger, someone who would not only survive this betrayal, but emerge from it transformed. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Tommy, about the example I wanted to set for him. He deserved to see his mother not as a victim, but as a warrior who faced adversity with grace and emerged victorious. Tomorrow would be another day of playing the dutiful wife while secretly building my arsenal. But now, every fake smile, every pretense of normalcy had a purpose. I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing for war. The consulting work with Sarah's company started the following week. While Tommy played with his blocks on the living room floor, I dove into digital marketing campaigns, my fingers flying across the keyboard with a confidence I thought I'd lost. Each completed project felt like a small victory, a step toward freedom. But Carter noticed the change in me. "You seem different," he said one evening, studying me across the dinner table. "More distracted." I met his gaze steadily. Years of presenting to tough clients finally proving useful at home. "Just trying to be more organized," I replied, gesturing to Tommy's schedule on the refrigerator. "It helps me feel more productive." The irony of his concern wasn't lost on me. While he worried about my distraction, his own secrets were unraveling faster than he knew. Alexandra, I discovered, worked at his firm, a junior financial advisor who'd joined 6 months ago. Through careful investigation of his discarded receipts and work event photos on the company's social media, I pieced together their relationship timeline. My first paycheck from the consulting work went straight into a secret account I'd opened at a different bank. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every dollar represented independence, a future where I wouldn't have to count on Carter's manipulation-laced generosity. The confrontation I'd been dreading came sooner than expected. One afternoon, while reviewing some work documents, a notification popped up on my laptop, an email from our joint credit card company. Carter had added a new user to the account, Alexandra Fortin. My hands trembled as I read the confirmation email. The audacity of it struck me like a physical blow. He'd given her access to our family's finances, to the money that was meant for our son's future. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I waited until Tommy was asleep that night. When Carter walked in, late as usual, I was sitting in the kitchen, the credit card email printed and placed on the table before me. "Want to tell me about Alexandra?" My voice was steady, calmer than I felt. The color drained from his face. For a moment, he stood frozen in the doorway, his usual confidence shattered. Then, like a cornered animal, he attacked. "You've been spying on me?" he snarled, advancing toward the table. "Going through my private emails? Private? Like our joint credit card is private?" I didn't back down. "Like our joint savings that paid for her car is private?" His expression shifted from anger to calculation. "You don't understand," he said, his voice softening. "Work has been stressful. You've been so focused on Tommy. I just needed someone who could..." "Could what, Carter? Help you spend our family's money?" The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "I gave up my career for our family. I trusted you." "Your career?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let's be honest. You were burning out. I gave you an excuse to quit. You should be thanking me." Each word was designed to hurt, to diminish, to remind me of my supposed inadequacies. But this time, they didn't land. Instead, they revealed him for what he was, a manipulator who had underestimated his target. "You're right," I said quietly. standing up. "I should thank you. You've shown me exactly who you are." His face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've been documenting everything, Carter. The car loan, the hotel charges, the jewelry receipts, everything." I watched as realization dawned on his face. I'm not the same woman you could manipulate anymore. He switched tactics instantly, his voice becoming pleading. "Think about Tommy. We can work this out. I'll break it off with her. We can go to counseling." "Tommy is exactly why I'm doing this," I interrupted. "He deserves better than watching his mother be disrespected and gaslit. We both deserve better." The argument that followed was intense but oddly liberating. Every accusation he hurled, every attempt at manipulation, only confirmed I was making the right choice. When he finally stormed out at midnight, slamming the door behind him, I didn't cry. Instead, I went to Tommy's room and watched him sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to him. "Better than okay." The next morning, I had 3 missed calls from Carter and a text message that read, "I'm sorry. Please don't do anything rash. Let's talk about this." But I was done talking. Instead, I called Sarah and accepted her offer for a full-time position. Then I called the lawyer I'd researched, a woman who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Finally, I called my parents, breaking my silence about what had been happening. Their response surprised me. "We've been worried about you," my mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "You haven't been yourself for so long. When can you and Tommy come stay with us?" As I packed our essential items that afternoon, I found myself humming. Actually humming, for the first time in months. The road ahead would be challenging, but at least it was my choice, my path. I was no longer a passenger in my own life. That evening, when Carter came home, he found an empty house and a letter from my lawyer. The war he had started with his betrayal was about to end on my terms. And this time, I had an army of supporters behind me. Living with my parents while rebuilding my life wasn't part of my life plan, but their spare bedroom became our sanctuary. Tommy adjusted surprisingly well, delighting in the constant attention from his grandparents. I, on the other hand, struggled with feelings of failure despite knowing I'd made the right choice. The divorce proceedings began, and Carter showed his true colors. He contested everything, from custody arrangements to asset division. His latest claim? That I was mentally unstable for leaving suddenly with our son. The irony of his accusation wasn't lost on me. He'd spent years trying to convince me I was inadequate, and now he was using that same narrative against me legally. But he'd underestimated me again. My documentation of his financial infidelity proved invaluable. When his lawyer claimed I was financially irresponsible, I presented spreadsheets detailing every suspicious transaction. When he argued that I was an unstable mother, I showed Tommy's detailed schedules and development records that I'd maintained since birth. My new job became my anchor. Sarah had created a flexible schedule that allowed me to balance work with legal meetings and Tommy's needs. My colleagues, many of whom were working mothers themselves, formed an unexpected support system. During lunch breaks, they shared their own stories of resilience and rebuilding. The turning point came during a particularly heated mediation session. Carter arrived with Alexandra, a power move designed to intimidate me. She was younger than I'd imagined, dressed expensively in clothes I recognized from our joint credit card statements. As they sat across the table, projecting an image of unity, I felt an unexpected surge of pity. "Mr. Peterson," our mediator began, "can you explain the recent car purchase made with marital funds?" Carter shifted uncomfortably. "It was a business investment." "A business investment registered in Ms. Fortin's name?" My lawyer's voice was sharp. "And the jewelry? The hotel stays? Were those business investments too?" I watched as Carter's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Alexandra's expression shifted from confidence to confusion as each piece of evidence was presented. By the end of the session, she left alone, and Carter's arrogance had been replaced by desperation. That evening, as I tucked Tommy into bed at my parents' house, he asked about his father. "When is Daddy coming home?" The question pierced my heart, but I remained calm. "Daddy and I are making some changes to make sure you have the happiest life possible," I explained, stroking his hair. Sometimes grown-ups need to live apart to be their best selves. Later, I sat on the back porch with my mother, sharing a glass of wine and watching the sunset. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "It takes courage to choose yourself." "I didn't just choose myself," I replied. "I chose Tommy, too. He deserves to see what healthy love looks like." The next few weeks brought unexpected developments. Alexandra reached out to me through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted to meet alone. Against my better judgment, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. "I had no idea about Tommy," she said, her eyes downcast. "Carter told me you were separated, that you'd abandoned him." Her hands trembled as she placed a folder on the table. "You need to see these." Inside were documents revealing even more deception. Carter hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been embezzling from his clients, using our marriage as a cover for his schemes. Alexandra, it turned out, had discovered the fraud and was struggling with her own guilt. "I've already reported him to the firm's ethics board," she said. "I should have done it sooner, but—" She trailed off. But I understood. Carter had a way of making you doubt your own judgment. This revelation changed everything. The divorce negotiations shifted dramatically as Carter faced professional ruin. His previous confidence evaporated, replaced by a desperate plea for discretion. My lawyer advised me to use this leverage wisely. In the end, we reached a settlement that exceeded my expectations. Full custody of Tommy, with supervised visitation for Carter. A fair division of assets, including restitution for the money he'd spent on Alexandra. Most importantly, my freedom, both financial and emotional. The day the divorce was finalized, I took Tommy to the park. As I watched him play, carefree and resilient, I realized we were both healing. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Team dinner tonight to celebrate your promotion?" I smiled, thinking about how far I'd come from the woman who'd discovered that bank statement. The path hadn't been easy, but each step had led me closer to becoming someone I was proud to be. Someone Tommy could be proud of, too. 3 months after the divorce, I bought our own apartment. It was smaller than our old house, but it was ours. No deception, no painful memories, just fresh starts and new possibilities. Tommy's room overlooked a playground, and he'd spend hours watching the other children play from his window before asking to join them. My promotion at work came with new responsibilities and challenges that I embraced wholeheartedly. The woman who had doubted her professional worth was gone, replaced by someone who confidently led team meetings and pitched to major clients. Sarah became more than a boss. She became a mentor and friend, pushing me to recognize my potential. Then came the call that shook my new foundation. "Carter has been arrested," my lawyer said, her voice tense. "The fraud investigation uncovered more than we anticipated. They're saying it goes back years, millions of dollars, multiple victims." The news hit the local business papers. Financial advisor Carter Peterson charged with multiple counts of fraud. My phone exploded with messages from former friends and colleagues. Some were supportive, others accusatory, as if I should have known, should have stopped him somehow. Tommy's teachers called, concerned about how he was handling the publicity. I found him in his room one afternoon, crying over a newspaper clipping a classmate had brought to school. "Why is Daddy in the newspaper? Why do people say he's bad?" I sat with him, fighting back my own tears. "Sometimes good people make bad choices," I explained, holding him close. "But that doesn't change how much he loves you, or how much I love you." The investigation revealed that Carter's fraud extended far beyond what Alexandra had discovered. He'd been running a sophisticated scheme for years, even before our marriage. The car loan and affair were just the tip of an iceberg of deception that had finally surfaced. One evening, as I was reviewing case files for work, my doorbell rang. It was Alexandra, looking disheveled and desperate. "They're investigating me too," she said, her voice breaking. I swear I didn't know the extent of it. "Carter, he said he'd help me start my own practice, that the money was from legitimate investments." I should have felt vindicated, seeing her suffer. Instead, I felt a strange kind of empathy. We were both victims of Carter's manipulation, albeit in very different ways. "Tell them everything you know," I advised her. "The truth has a way of setting you free." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, counseling the woman who had been my husband's mistress. But her presence reminded me of how far I'd come. The pain of betrayal had transformed into wisdom, the anger into strength. Work became my sanctuary during this turbulent time. I threw myself into a major rebranding campaign, channeling my emotions into creativity. My team noticed the change in my leadership style. More empathetic, more intuitive. "You have a way of seeing through people's defenses," Sarah commented during a review. "It's like you've developed a sixth sense for authenticity." Tommy and I settled into a new routine. Weekend mornings were for pancakes and park visits. Evenings were for stories and stargazing from our balcony. He asked about Carter less frequently, but when he did, I maintained honest, age-appropriate explanations. The investigation's spotlight eventually faded, but its lessons remained. I learned that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about how you piece yourself back together. Each challenge, each setback, became another brick in the foundation of our new life. One night, as I was tucking Tommy into bed, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, are you happy now?" I paused, really considering his question. The woman I was 2 years ago wouldn't have recognized my life now. Single motherhood, career success, genuine friendships. But most importantly, she wouldn't have recognized my smile in the mirror. Authentic, unguarded, real. "Yes, sweetheart," I answered truthfully. "I'm very happy." "Are you?" His sleepy nod was all the confirmation I needed. We had weathered the storm together and emerged stronger. The future held new challenges, certainly, but now I faced them with confidence, knowing that every betrayal had led me closer to my true self. A year after the divorce, Sarah introduced me to her brother, George. He was different from Carter in every way. A pediatrician with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that put both Tommy and me at ease. Our first meeting was unplanned, at the office holiday party where he'd come to pick up his sister. "You must be the marketing genius Sarah won't stop talking about," he said, extending his hand. His smile reached his eyes, something I'd learned to notice after years of Carter's calculated expressions. I found myself drawn into easy conversation with him, discussing everything from children's books to travel dreams. When he mentioned being a single dad to a 6-year-old daughter, I felt a flutter of recognition. He understood the delicate balance of parenting and healing from past wounds. But dating as a single mother carried its own complexities. The first time George asked me to dinner, panic gripped my chest. "I need to think about it," I said, remembering how Carter's betrayal had affected not just me, but Tommy too. That evening, I called my mother for advice. "Healing doesn't mean you stop living," she said wisely. "Tommy deserves to see you happy, to learn that love can be healthy and kind." Our first date was simple. Dinner at a casual restaurant where we talked for hours. George spoke about his daughter Emma and his own divorce story, marked by his ex-wife's addiction struggles rather than betrayal. His honesty and vulnerability were refreshing. "I've learned that broken things can be beautiful when pieced back together," he said, showing me a photo of Emma's favorite kintsugi bowl, Japanese pottery repaired with gold. The cracks become part of the story, not something to hide. As weeks turned into months, George became a steady presence in our lives. He understood when I needed to cancel plans because Tommy was sick, or when work deadlines demanded my attention. There was no manipulation, no guilt-tripping, just patient understanding. The first time Tommy met Emma at a playground playdate, I watched anxiously as they sized each other up. Within minutes, they were building sandcastles together, their laughter echoing across the park. George stood beside me, our shoulders barely touching. "They're resilient, aren't they?" he mused, watching our children play. "Sometimes I think they heal faster than we do." But healing wasn't linear. Some days, old fears would surface. When George first left a few items at my apartment, I found myself checking his pockets, searching for signs of deception. He caught me once, and instead of anger, showed compassion. "I understand," he said quietly. "Trust takes time. I'm not going anywhere." Work continued to thrive. My team's success led to an opportunity to open a new branch office, with me as director. The old me would have hesitated, worried about balancing increased responsibility with single motherhood. The new me saw it as another adventure, George supported my ambitions wholeheartedly. "You're showing Tommy what strength looks like," he said one evening as I practiced my presentation for the board. "And Emma needs to see that too." The dynamics of blending our families had its challenges. Tommy sometimes struggled with sharing attention, and Emma had moments of missing her mother. But we approached each obstacle with patience and open communication. One rainy Sunday, as the four of us sat building a massive Lego city in my living room, I caught George watching me with an expression that made my heart skip. Later, after the kids were asleep during one of our regular sleepovers, he took my hand. "I know we both carry scars," he said softly, "but I've never felt more certain about anyone in my life." I looked at our intertwined fingers, thinking about how far I'd come from the woman who discovered that bank statement. The pain of Carter's betrayal had taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth and resilience. Now, with George, I was learning new lessons about trust and love. "I'm certain too," I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. "But I'm not the same person I was before." "Good," he smiled. "That's exactly who I fell in love with. This version of you. The strong, amazing woman who rebuilt herself from the ground up." Later that night, listening to the peaceful breathing of our children from their rooms, I realized that sometimes life's greatest betrayals lead us exactly where we need to be, not as victims of our past, but as architects of our future. The news came on an ordinary Tuesday. Carter was being released early for good behavior and cooperation with the investigation. My lawyer called to inform me he'd requested to reinstate visitation rights with Tommy. I found George in his home office that evening, reviewing patient files. "Carter is being released," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. His response was immediate, not with words, but by simply standing and holding me while I processed the implications. The first supervised visit was scheduled at a family center. Tommy was excited but nervous, clutching his favorite dinosaur toy. Carter looked different, thinner, older, humbled. Prison had stripped away his polished exterior. "I'm sorry," were his first words to me, quiet enough that Tommy couldn't hear from where he played with the center's toys. "For everything." I studied him, searching for signs of the old manipulation. Instead, I found something unexpected: genuine remorse. He'd undergone therapy in prison, he explained, confronting the patterns that led to his choices. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just want a chance to be a better father than I was a husband." Watching him with Tommy that day was surreal. Gone was the distracted father who'd barely engaged with his son. In his place was someone who listened intently to Tommy's stories, who asked thoughtful questions about his interests. George supported my decision to allow these visits to continue, provided they remained supervised. "Tommy deserves the chance to know his father," he said. "And you're strong enough now to handle whatever comes." The true test came during a chance encounter at Tommy's school fair. I was there with George, Emma, and Tommy when Carter arrived. He'd been granted permission to attend school events. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as my past and present collided. Carter approached us, hesitant. George instinctively stepped closer to me, not possessive, but protective. The contrast between the two men was stark. Carter in his prison-issued clothes, George in his casual weekend wear with Emma's paint from the art booth on his sleeve. "You look happy," Carter said softly, his eyes taking in our blended family scene. "He's good to you?" "To Tommy?" "They both are," I replied, watching as Emma showed Tommy how to win at ring toss. "We're good." Later that night, after both kids were asleep, I found George on our balcony. "Thank you," I said, "for being exactly who you are." He pulled me close. "You know, seeing him today made me realize something. His biggest mistake wasn't the fraud or even the affair. It was not recognizing the amazing woman he had. I won't make the same mistake." 2 weeks later, Carter called with unexpected news. He'd been offered a job at a prison outreach program, helping former inmates rebuild their lives. "I want to use my mistakes to help others," he said. "Maybe then some good can come from all this." I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the devastated woman discovering bank statements to the confident professional and mother I'd become. Carter's betrayal had broken me, yes, but I'd rebuilt myself stronger. That evening, as our blended family gathered for dinner, Tommy and Emma arguing over whose turn it was to set the table, George adding his special seasoning to the sauce, I realized that sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our best lives. Carter would always be Tommy's father, a complex figure in our story, but he was no longer the center of my narrative. That role belonged to me, to the woman who had learned that trust, when given to the right person, wasn't a weakness, but a strength. The email from our company's London office arrived on a Monday morning. They wanted me to lead their international marketing division, a 2-year commitment that would mean relocating to England. 5 years ago, this would have been my dream opportunity. Now it was complicated. "You should take it," George said that evening after the kids were asleep. We sat on our balcony, the city lights twinkling below. "It's an incredible opportunity. But what about us? The kids? Tommy's visits with Carter?" The questions tumbled out. "I can't ask you to uproot your practice, and Emma needs stability." He took my hand, his touch familiar and reassuring. "Remember when you told me about finding that bank statement? How it felt like your world was ending, but it actually led you here?" I nodded, understanding his point. Sometimes the scariest decisions led to the best outcomes. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of discussions and planning. Carter surprised me by being supportive of the move, offering to arrange video calls with Tommy and agreeing to extended summer visits. "You've built something good," he said during one of Tommy's supervised visits. "Don't let my past mistakes hold you back." George's proposal came unexpectedly, during a regular Sunday breakfast with the kids. He got down on one knee beside the pancake-strewn table, pulling out a ring box. "Before you answer," he said, "I want you to know, this isn't about London. This is about us, our family, wherever we end up." Tommy and Emma bounced excitedly in their chairs as I said yes, their cheers drowning out the city noise below. The ring was simple and elegant, nothing like the flashy one Carter had given me. It felt right. 2 months later, we were married in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard. Tommy and Emma were our ring bearers, giggling as they walked down the makeshift aisle together. Sarah, my boss-turned-sister-in-law, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. "When I introduced these two," she said, "I knew my brother had met his match. Here was a woman who had turned betrayal into strength, fear into courage, and now she's turning my annoying little brother into a decent human being." The London decision wasn't easy, but we made it together. George found a position at a children's hospital there, and we worked with Emma's mother to ensure regular visits. The kids were excited about becoming British, as they called it, already practicing their accents. One evening, packing up our apartment, I found the old bank statement that had started everything. It seemed like a lifetime ago. That scared, betrayed woman felt like a stranger now. I showed it to George. "Keep it," he said. "It's part of your journey. Like that kintsugi bowl we have. Sometimes the breaks make us more beautiful." As I looked around at our half-packed life, Tommy and Emma arguing over whose books were whose, George organizing our medical records, the wedding photo fresh on our wall, I realized that trust wasn't about never being broken. It was about choosing to be whole again, about finding people who honor your repairs rather than cause them. The woman who had discovered her husband's betrayal could never have imagined this future. A loving marriage, a blended family, an international career move. But then again, she couldn't have imagined her own strength either. 5 years after moving to London, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "I thought you should know." It was from Alexandra. Carter had suffered a major financial setback. The woman he'd been dating, the daughter of a wealthy client from his prison outreach program, had orchestrated an elaborate scheme, convincing him to invest his savings in a non-existent business venture. He'd lost everything. I read the email twice, waiting for the satisfaction to hit. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. The cycle had come full circle, but I was no longer part of it. Tommy, now 12, was thriving in our London life. He'd developed a British accent that amused his father during their summer visits, and his bond with Emma had grown into a genuine sibling relationship. George's pediatric practice had become one of the most respected in the city, and my marketing division had expanded across Europe. "Mom," Tommy said one evening, helping me prepare dinner. I saw Dad's Facebook post about losing his money. Are you going to help him? The question caught me off guard. What do you think I should do? He considered this, showing maturity beyond his years. You always say that being strong means helping others, even when they don't deserve it. But you also say we should be wise about who we trust. George, overhearing from his home office, joined us in the kitchen. Your mom taught me that lesson, he said, wrapping an arm around my waist. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is maintain healthy boundaries. I decided to send Carter a contact for financial counseling, the same service that had helped me rebuild after our divorce. Not money, not direct help, but a tool he could use to help himself. His response was brief but genuine. Thank you. You've become the person I should have appreciated having in my life. That night, lying in bed with George, I reflected on the journey. Did I make the right choice? I asked. About Carter? You chose compassion without compromising your boundaries, he replied. That's the woman I married. The next morning, I had a video call with Sarah, who'd taken over my old position in the States. Remember that terrified woman who walked into my office 5 years ago? She asked. Look at you now, running an international division, raising 2 amazing kids, showing others how to rebuild their lives. She was right. Every step of my journey, from discovering that bank statement to moving across the ocean, had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me had instead forced me to discover my true worth. Later that week, I gave a keynote speech at a women's leadership conference. Looking out at the audience, I saw faces that reminded me of my younger self. Women questioning their worth, their strength, their choices. Rock bottom, I told them, is not a destination. It's a foundation. Build from there. After the speech, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. I just discovered my husband's affair, she whispered. I feel so lost. I shared with her what I wish someone had told me years ago. You're not lost. You're finding your way to who you're meant to be. That evening, I came home to find George helping Emma with her science project, while Tommy practiced his guitar. Our London apartment, with its view of the Thames and walls covered in family photos, felt like a physical manifestation of my journey. Proof that endings can be beginnings in disguise. Carter's story had become just that. A story. A chapter closed. My new life, built on the ashes of betrayal, had blossomed into something more beautiful than I could have imagined. Not because of what was done to me, but because of what I chose to do with it. Ready for movie night? George called from the living room, where the kids were already arguing over which film to watch. More than ready, I replied, joining my family on the couch, complete and whole in a way that the woman with the bank statement could never have imagined possible.